Life is good, but it can be better.
Yeah, no kidding, Sherlock. Wonder Woman 1984, released in the year 2020 and is directed by Patty Jenkins, who has also directed the film Monster and the original Wonder Woman from 2017. And this film is starring Gal Gadot, Kristen Wiig, Pedro Pascal, Robin Wright, Connie Nielsen, and the return of Chris Pine as Steve Trevor. Kinda. The year is 1984 and Diana has used the moniker of Wonder Woman to secretly save a bunch of people in malls and things. It's the 80s and malls were frickin' crazy at that time. But she is still suffering from the loss of her true love Steve Trevor in World War I and has a wish that she could see him at least one more time. Enter the entrepreneur Maxwell Lord, who has recently come into the possession of a magical stone that grants everyone their one wish if they hold on and possess it. Now Maxwell Lord is granting everyone's wish and taking something for himself in return, making him one of the most powerful people in the world. Now it's up to Wonder Woman and a returning Steve Trevor, kinda, to stop this madman from taking over the world. So let's go back. Let's go back to the wonderful, magical year that was 2020, the year where the coronavirus, where COVID just really took its effect and everything in the world shut down, and that included all the movie theaters. Well, except for Christopher Nolan, who thought that he was going to rejuvenate and save the movie industry by releasing his movie Tenet in theaters because, you know, I'm Christopher Nolan and I do what I want. My films can only be shown in the movie theaters. That's the only time where my art can truly be appreciated. God damn, I lost a lot of respect for that man during that year. What a fucking asshole. But no movies were being released. This film was supposed to be released in 2020 in the summer to be one of the big summer blockbusters. That wasn't until Warner Brothers, who started doing all their stuff through HBO Max and their app that they released, decided that all of their movie releases for the next year are going to be released in theaters, in limited theaters with limited seating, but also on their app at HBO Max in the comfort of your own home. And this was Christmas time, so I was just gung-ho to watch anything brand new. I just missed going to the theater. I missed seeing brand new movies. So watching this for the first time, I sat there thinking, you know what? This was good. I enjoyed this. This was good. And then the next day, I started thinking about this plot, and I was like, okay, so this didn't really make sense, but it was still fine. It's fine. We're still fine here now. Thank you. How are you? And then the next day, and the next day, and the next day kept happening, and I began to realize that I was happiness blind, and I finally realized that this movie is not good. The story here is almost complete shit. And I hate saying that. I hate saying that the sequel to one of my favorite movies of all time, a movie that affected me emotionally and is the reason why this channel existed. When I saw Wonder Woman in 2017, I thought that movie was fantastic. And I've been thinking about this YouTube channel for a long time. That movie was great. I want to talk about it. I'm starting this fucking thing. The reason why I have this creative outlet is because of Wonder Woman from 2017. So for me to say that the sequel to that movie doesn't live up to the hype and just pales in comparison and is basically an insult to that movie, it pains me to say that. But this movie is an insult to that film. It tries to undo everything that made the first Wonder Woman great. And the big reason for that is how they reintroduce Steve Trevor to Diana in Diana's world here in the 1980s. Diana makes the wish that she could see Steve Trevor one more time. Why didn't the writers decide to just bring Steve Trevor back? It would have been fine. It would have been perfect. This movie probably would not have been as terrible as it was. But instead, they bring back Steve Trevor's consciousness and place it into someone else's brain, and Steve uses that other person's body to move around, and Diana knows it's someone else. She sees the original person when she first meets him, but then the spell or whatever starts to slowly dissolve, and she sees Steve Trevor, and we, as the audience, see Steve Trevor. But they talk about how, like, wow, this guy, he's like an engineer or something. Here's his apartment. Oh, he doesn't live very well. It just undermines the whole idea of Diana wanting to see Steve again, and to rekindling that relationship that they had. It undermines it completely. Why not just bring Steve Trevor back for this? It would have made the goodbye of Steve Trevor in this movie hurt that much more, knowing that Steve Trevor is basically just dissolving, is not going to be here anymore. But instead, it's just a consciousness, he's gone, and then the guy is still there. Like, you made this too complicated, and you didn't need to. I know when this movie came out, they were talking about how this is like assault or sexual assault because Diana had sex with Steve Trevor's consciousness in this other person's body. I'm like, don't go that far. It's a movie. It's a story. She loves this man. It was consensual with the consciousness. Then you start talking about, like, okay, what's a person? It's the consciousness. I'm not going to go there anymore. It's a bullshit argument. Get off your soapbox if you're still on that. It's really just from the story aspect that doesn't work. And then the whole Maxwell Lord, he becomes the magic granting stone, so he's granting all these wishes, but then apparently there's something in the bylaw saying, okay, if I give you a wish, I take something from you. And then they establish that you can only have one wish. He goes up to a person, he needs a ride to the White House, and they're like, oh no, you already grant me my wish. You gave me a car a couple of weeks ago. Thank you very much. And then Max starts freaking out. He tries to find someone who hasn't used their one and only wish yet. But then you get into the helicopter, and there's Kristen Wiig as Barbara Minerva, and she's already had her wish. She's nice and powerful, and she has all the powers of Diana. But then Maxwell Lord's like, I'm going to give you another wish. I'm feeling generous today. Well, you're feeling generous? When did you have that capability? Because story, plot, and reasons? The most important aspect of a film for me, or any novel or game or whatever, is the story, is its plot. And if the plot is convoluted, if it doesn't make sense, if you're just kind of cramming things on top of each other because you want things on top of each other, the movie, the story, the book, the game, whatever, is not going to be good. Your story has to make sense. The reasons why our characters go from place to place and how they get there, that is important. And if that doesn't make sense, the film is not going to make sense. And if the film's not going to make sense, then it's going to be a terrible fucking time. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, I will always love. I think she is beautiful. She's the most beautiful person on this planet. She is my number one when it comes to me and my wife's hall passes. I get 5, she gets 5. She is by far my number one. And there are moments and story aspects in this film that I absolutely love. When Diana is asking Steve about, flying, like, how do you fly? And Steve's talking about, well, you find the air, you catch it. I think that's beautiful. A beautiful way to describe flight and flying. And then the scene where Diana is flying and she's learning to fly solo by herself, I think it's a great moment. It's a great scene. There are a couple of them in this movie, and I absolutely love them. But then there are other moments in here that don't make sense, like she puts on the golden Asteria armor because toys and Funko Pops and collectibles and stuff. The Asteria armor has wings so that she can fly. Well, she doesn't need that. She had her powers back already, so she didn't need that armor. She could just fly, like she was doing. She was using her lasso to grab a hold of the clouds or grab a hold of the lightning bolts, and she could just fly. Why do we need the armor? And then she's going up against wind in the final battle. To go from the God of War in the original film's climax, which I think is a beautiful third act. I know a lot of people didn't like the third act in the first Wonder Woman film for some reason. I loved it. There's really not a thing of that movie that I hated. Everything just worked for me on an emotional and story level. But to go from the God of War to wind in a bunker somewhere doesn't make sense. And after we've had films like Justice League and Batman v Superman, where Wonder Woman Diana says that she shut herself off from mankind for 100 years after World War I, for us to go back in time into the 80s where we see Diana not doing that, it doesn't make sense. I have a feeling that Warner Brothers was trying to reboot themselves back in 2020, long before they gave the role to James Gunn and Peter Safran here in 2023. They were just trying to undo everything. And setting it in the 80s, what was the purpose? The only purpose here is because of films like Guardians of the Galaxy, where we take a whole bunch of like 70s and 80s musics and we're talking about all 80s pop culture. Oh yeah, that's cool. It's now. Everyone loves talking about pop culture from the 80s, so we're going to do a Wonder Woman movie in the 80s. Doesn't play into anything. We see Kristen Wiig go into a gym with all the 80s gym gear, and it's a scene that lasts like 20 seconds, and that's it. Diana goes to a mall to have a little action scene. Okay, fine. Malls were cool back in the 80s. They're all dead now, but those scenes could have been done anywhere else. The movie is just a gigantic miss, and I remember saying that I really enjoyed this movie in 2020. I think I put it at the top of my superhero ranking film of that year. I don't know what I was thinking. I can be wrong. I will admit that I was wrong. This film is not good, and it is one of the worst of the DCEU just because it doesn't make sense. And I wanted to get my review of this out of the way because I do want to set myself up for a DCEU ranking sometime in the future, probably after the release of Blue Beetle, which comes out this weekend, and then Aquaman 2 that comes out in December. I'll probably do the ranking somewhere around after that, because this is still this previous regime of the DCEU before it switches over to the DCU eventually, which should always have been called. The movie is just proof that this studio really had no idea what they were doing, or at least didn't know where they wanted to take these characters, because they wanted to get rid of all the Snyder-ish stuff in this universe, but they also wanted to keep other aspects of it. It was all just fighting against each other. I felt like this film was fighting against this universe, and it shouldn't. This should all just be one united universe where everyone is happy and everyone is working together. Wonder Woman 84, like I said, it has some great things, but overall, the directing, not good. The story, not good. The soundtrack, while I think it is great, Hans Zimmer is a fantastic composer, and the score for this film is great. I don't understand why I think it happens at one point in the film where we get the Wonder Woman theme. Like, Hans, you created the Wonder Woman theme. You had it in one little section where Diana was saving a bunch of mannequins in the Middle East. But then we never hear it again. We hear your beautiful score that you have for this movie, and I play it on a lot. The track that is called Truth, I listen to that all the time. I think it is beautiful. But why don't we hear the goddamn Wonder Woman theme? Wonder Woman 84, it's definitely towards the bottom of my ranking of the entire DCEU, and after watching this, I can see why they didn't want to go ahead with another Wonder Woman 3 with Patty Jenkins, especially if they were still going to do like a prequel to the events of Batman v Superman and Justice League. Why would you want to? I want to see the progression of a character. I don't want to see a character regress, which is what we got here. I'm going to give Wonder Woman 1984 2 out of 5 Blu-rays. So guys, if you've seen Wonder Woman 84, what did you think about it? Or if you've never seen it before and you stumbled across because of this video, then comment below, let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you see here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell so you'll know the next time I release next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time on the channel, but in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.